Ever notice how school textbooks never mention the moment thousands of Native Americans were shipped out of their own homeland as slaves? To understand how that happened, you have to go back to 1675, when New England was tearing itself apart during King Philip's War. And it's important to remember something that the textbooks never say. The people fighting the colonies weren't invaders. They were defending the land they had already shared. When the English first arrived, Native nations helped them survive winters they weren't prepared for. They offered food, knowledge, and space, but generosity became opportunity. And little by little, the colonies took more land, more control, and more authority than they were ever given. By the time King Philip's War began, Native communities were watching newcomers turn into conquerors. They were fighting to hold on to the only home they had ever known. In that chaos, the colonies had one priority: end Native resistance fast and lock down the territory forever. But the war didn't bend to colonial plans. Native fighters knew every trail, every marsh, every ridge. This was their world. They fought in it with precision, and every colonial loss pushed the government towards something darker, and that's where the story turns. The part almost no history book admits. By late 1675, colonial courts approved a policy that changed everything. Native men, women, and children taken in the fighting were labeled war captives. From that moment on, they were treated as assets the colonies could sell and ship away. Families were marched to ports like Boston and Plymouth. They were sorted like inventory. And then they were loaded onto ships headed for Barbados, Bermuda, Jamaica, and the Azores an ocean away, to make sure they would never return to the land they defended. Some were sold for a few coins. Many were forced into brutal labor under a foreign sun. Children were separated from their families, and countless people never saw their homeland again. And here's the part almost nobody learns in school. America teaches African slavery, and it should. But almost no one is told that Native people were also taken, sold, and shipped out of the continent while fighting to protect their own land. The result was devastating. Entire Native lineages vanished from New England, not because they died in battle, not because of disease, but because they were removed on purpose, far from the place they belonged. This is what redacted history looks like. The documents exist, the ships existed, the people existed, but the story is softened, edited, and buried, because it's harder to celebrate a colony when you admit what it did to the people who first helped it survive.